So the whole time I was in my 20s, I thought that I didn't really have to worry about love. I just figured that one day I'd be sitting in my house minding my own business and I'd hear a knock on the door, and when I opened it, there'd be a guy on a white horse, and he would like sweep me off my feet, and we'd go to the Caribbean, have sex on some beaches, and then like come home, have a couple little hipster kids named Maisie and Atticus, get them into a good charter school and live happily ever after, right? It's the American dream. But when I got into my 30s, I realized that everyone around me was coupling up and I wasn't. And it turns out also that the only single straight men I knew were my cousins. And while I am from Ohio, I'm not from that part of Ohio. So I thought maybe it was time to branch out and really start trying harder, and I decided to start dating online. And I was so excited when I started doing this, you guys. I had hope, like huge amounts of hope. I was like, why did I not do this earlier? The internet is like a boyfriend catalog. And I'm gonna be so good at this. I'm gonna be like reasonable and generous and give people the benefit of the doubt, and I'm gonna have rules and boundaries and limitations. I'm gonna stick to them, and I am gonna win. I'm gonna win this game. And so we all know the first rule of internet dating is Google, right? You have to Google everyone. And I did Google bachelor number one, I did. But he had a really common last name, first name and last name, and he sort of worked for himself, and so there was nothing about him online, really. But he did have, he was cute, and he was tall, and he played guitar, which I really liked, so I was like, you know what, that's okay, I'm not gonna worry about this. Not everybody is shady. Foreshadowing. And after we'd been dating about a month, I was sitting at work, and I get this email from someone I don't know, and the subject line is, "Attention, ladies. David Smith is not who you think he is." And I was like, that's not cool. So I open the email, and of course, it's from his wife, his allegedly non-existent wife, who had copied me and several other ladies on this email to let us know that her husband was actually not named David Smith, and he did not work from home, but he was a stay-at-home dad who was supposed to be taking care of their kids while she went out and worked every day. But instead, he had been having all these affairs. And she found out because she found his fake David Smith at Gmail account and, blew the whole thing up. And I was horrified on like 500 levels, obviously, but when I think about it now, I'm just mad that I was so naive. Like, I just believed him when he said stuff, like, as if Google doesn't exist for a reason, And, now when I date someone, I'm like the NSA. If we've been chatting on OkCupid for 5 minutes, I have tapped your phone. Don't think I haven't. But at the time, I guess you have to learn these painful lessons for a reason, and that was rule number one, Google. I did it, it didn't work. Next. The next rule, of course, is that I learned from David, I already knew it, but I had to learn it several times, is that you have to date men who are single. But what's tricky about that is that it turns out people have different definitions of what single is. So after the David debacle, I started dating this really brilliant, sweet, shy guy named Adam, and I loved him. He gave me butterflies like I hadn't had since I was 14 years old. I thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And he had been separated for 2 years, and I was the first person he dated since his divorce, and I felt super, super lucky that I found him. Like I'd found this treasure that other people didn't know about. And I was smitten. We spent all this time together. It was the year of snowpocalypse, so we got to hole up for a week, and I made him beef stew, and I helped him pick out cool new glasses, and I was like, I'm gonna heal this man with the power of my love. I'm gonna teach him about high thread count sheets, and I'm gonna give him so much compassion and support and wear so much fancy lingerie that when this divorce is final, he is gonna be begging me to move in and start researching charter schools. And I had never had any issues with dating divorced guys. In fact, for a while I thought it was kind of preferable because I figured that they had a proven track record of commitment, right? They'd already been married, so clearly they knew how to do it, unlike the single guys in their 30s who had never been married. But having never been married myself, I also assumed that divorced was the same as separated, that they were essentially the same. Like temporary license tags are essentially the same as permanent license tags, you know? You've paid your money, you've said what you're gonna do, you've notified the state, you're just waiting for like a sign off, but in fact, they're very different. Because while I was thinking about Maisie and Atticus and what school district we were gonna live in, Adam was arguing with his wife his ex, 5 times a day on the phone about like who had to pay for soccer camp and whose turn it was to mow the lawn and, you know, all this stuff. So predictably, once the divorce was final, he took his cool new eyeglasses and he left me. And I was pretty brokenhearted, but you know, when you think about it, like, I think I was a crutch that he needed to get him through a hard time. And it makes sense to think that once your injury has faded, you don't need your crutches around anymore. So on the one hand, yay me, I did actually heal him with the power of my love. But on the other hand, you know, I kind of worked myself out of a job in the process. But even after that, after the the married guy and the heartbreaker guy, I was still out there, I was still trying. And this is where Brian comes into the picture. And Brian was a little bit different than anyone else I'd ever dated. He was like 45 and very much a grown-up. You know, he owned his own house, he lived in the city, he had a presence online, he had a Facebook page, and also he had never been married, which were 2 humongous points in his favor. And also he was really upfront about wanting the same things I wanted. You know, he wanted something serious and long-term and like maybe a couple kids. And so, but there was also a lot of things about Brian that I didn't really like. For instance, he was, you know, kind of rude to bartenders, which is like a pet peeve of mine. I think it makes you a bad person. And he was, you know, like a little too drunk at dinner. And also, most importantly, I think one of the most underlooked dating rules is that, well, you have to listen to your head and you have to listen to your heart. You also have to pay attention to the messages of your vagina. And my vagina was telling me that I did not want to see Brian naked at all, ever. Never, ever, 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 ever. But he kept coming back. He kept coming back around. He'd be like, you know, Cara, I think you need to realize, like, at this stage of the game, relationships are about compromise. You know, no one gets everything that they want, like, and I feel like we have so much in common, and we want the same things, and I really like you, and I think we can make this work. And I was like, you know, like, it makes sense. Like, my head is feeling this, right? It makes a lot of sense. And then he went on to say, and you know, frankly, at your age, if you want to have kids, you cannot afford to wait too long, because your eggs are dying every day. And I was like, well, you know, that's not the sexiest thing anyone ever said to me, but he does have a point. And I was really trying to talk to my ladyhood about this, and I was like, you guys, you know, maybe we're gonna have to get on board with this plan, because this other stuff is not working. So I'm sitting at work, I'm thinking about Brian, and I open my news reader to like read some news, and I see a headline that says, "Senior Capitol Hill staffer arrested for trying to bring marijuana into a house office building." And I was like, why would I have a feeling that that's Brian? There's no reason it should be Brian. But sure enough, you also have to follow your gut instinct, and when I clicked into it, there he was, Mr. Adult Compromise, the 45-year-old secret pot smoker. And I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm gonna have to get my own white horse and ride it to the Shady Grove Fertility Center and freeze my eggs until somebody makes a rule book that actually works this shit out. Thank you.